Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 6th, National Root Beer Float Day. Hope that puts a pep in your step. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, I know you're not a carbonation gal.
I'm not, but my husband loves a root beer float. So I guess I'm excited about today. Woo!
Michael's excited. I'm excited. We should note the root beer float. Where was it invented? Colorado. Cripple Creek, just outside Colorado Springs there. A guy, Frank Wisner, was the owner of a brewer and apparently combined vanilla ice cream with his root beer and created what he called the Black Cow. And so 130 plus years later, we're thankful to Frank. And so, Jill, I actually got this. This was in my calendar because one of you DM'd me. I think a couple of you actually messaged me about it, being like, Moshe, don't forget, August 6th is National Root Beer Float Day. So this is for you, whoever sent me that detail. I put it in my calendar.
And sticking with food and drinks, I guess, want to quickly mention McDonald's is bringing back adult Happy Meals. So they're reuniting the whole McDonald's land gang. We're talking Grimace, Birdie, and the Hamburglar.
Yes, so this they did the first adult Happy Meals back in 2022. Those sold out immediately. The toys ended up on eBay and other online marketplaces. Last summer, they had a collector meal with a collectible cup. And so this time around, the adult Happy Meal, again, is available, launching on August 12th, so early next week.
Okay, now to the headlines. Just 48 hours until President Trump's deadline for Russia to stop fighting in Ukraine. Now, Russia has a plan that it hopes will appease the Trump administration. To the latest on summer travel, it's looking a lot different this year. One question, where have all the Canadians gone?
Yeah, we'll talk about the impact of U.S. policies and what it's meant both here and abroad.
To the Middle East, there's some reporting that President Trump plans to, quote, take over the Gaza aid effort, what that could look like.
They're still figuring it out. We'll give you the latest.
Wildfire smoke from Canada drifting to the United States, putting 3 major cities on the top 10 list for the worst air quality in the world.
And across the world, in Hong Kong, the latest city facing torrential rain in just a matter of hours that swamped the city.
To immigration, the president teasing a new policy for migrant farm labor, what it could look like. And NASA looking to build a nuclear reactor on the moon by the end of the decade. So Moshe, they've been talking about this for a while. What's the rush?
We'll explain that and why exactly they think they need a nuclear reactor on the moon.
And for travel closer to home, first, the TSA said we could leave our shoes on at airport security, and now they're adding family lanes. So they're meant to help families traveling with kids. I can't tell, though, Moshe, if this is going to just be a total nightmare. Like, do you want to be on a travel lane with a ton of kids? I don't know.
Or do you want to, train your kids to be very efficient with their own carry-ons and go through digital ID line or clear line with the adults?
Right, if all of the families are on one line, might it make sense to try to just go on to the adult line with your family? I don't know.
We'll discuss.
And Moshe is on this day in history.
Jill, a very significant day in World War II history on this day in history.
Okay, White House envoy Steve Witkoff expected to travel to Moscow today, potentially meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. It is Witkoff's 5th visit to Russia this year, but it will be his first meeting with Putin in more than 3 months. It's seen as a last chance to reach some type of peace deal before the U.S. imposes sanctions on countries that import oil from Russia. President Trump set a Friday deadline for that ceasefire deal. And Bloomberg is reporting that one option that the Kremlin is potentially thinking about as a way to appease President Trump, a limited air truce. So Moshe, what would that look like?
So allegedly here, the air truce means standing down on airstrikes involving drones and missiles. They have picked up in recent months. Frankly, the attacks from Russia on targets across Ukraine have only increased since Trump took office. And it's been one of the reasons that Trump has been very frustrated with Vladimir Putin here, especially as Trump has come in looking to promise an end to war within 24 hours. We're now more than 6 months in, no relief in sight. But it appears here the war is too important to Putin here He thinks that the longer this goes, the better it is for him. So they're not ready to end the war entirely here. It's not clear that an air truce will be sufficient to satisfying Trump. Putin, remember, has made various promises in recent months, like I won't do this and I won't do that. And then it never really came to fruition. And so you have seen, and we've been playing audio from Trump in recent weeks where he is just totally over it at this juncture. Now, the big thing we're watching is, what does this deadline mean? Trump has set this deadline for Friday for Putin to stop all things. It doesn't appear that Putin's taking him very seriously. And even the threat from Trump has to do with sanctions. Now, there's only a couple $2 billion a year in trade that's left between the U.S. and Russia. So Putin's like, it's not that big of a deal. Now, the big threat Trump has made of late is on countries that buy Russian oil. That includes India. Now, will Trump actually make good on that and force the Indians, which have they're the largest population on Earth and very much require a lot of energy in order to make their economy go? What alternative do the Indians have? And so the big question at the end of this week is, Trump has set this deadline. He's drawn this red line, so to speak, in diplomatic speak. Will he make good on it? Putin thinks he's bluffing. And so that'll be what we're watching here. I don't know what will really come from Witkoff and Putin. Maybe Putin offers this small thing. Trump can take it as a win because, of course, I don't think Trump wants to try to force the Indians to stop buying oil because, again, while he can say it rhetorically, making good on that is going to be very challenging. One thing we should note is there is an ongoing conversation with the Ukrainians. Trump spoke by phone yesterday morning with the Ukrainian President Zelensky, but it wasn't the only phone call that he made yesterday.
And Moshe, we got a glimpse into the president's very busy morning on Tuesday. So in addition to speaking to Vladimir Zelensky, he first spoke to CNBC. He did an interview with Squawk Box over the phone at 8 a.m. Eastern. That interview lasted about 40 minutes. And he made a bunch of news. He defended the firing of the person in charge of the jobs report, something we covered earlier this week. He doubled down on Texas's redistricting maps. He said he himself got the most ever votes from Texas in a presidential election. So he says Republicans are, quote, entitled to 5 more seats.
And Jill, late yesterday, he said the FBI may have to get involved here and arrest the 50-plus Texas Democrats who left the state. It's not clear that the FBI has the authority to do that or how that would work. But certainly, he's been very gung-ho. He's the one who's been pushing Texas to redraw the districts there. It's something we went in depth in the last couple of podcasts. So listen to the last couple of podcasts for background and all of that. But that standoff continues for now.
So shortly after he did the CNBC interview, he spoke to Ukrainian's president. Zelensky described that as a productive call. And then around 11 a.m., there was President Trump spotted by the White House press corps walking on the roof of the White House. Unclear exactly what he was doing. It's not something that you see every day. He was with other people. The thinking was that he was perhaps scouting some potential construction projects to the White House.
No shortage of those going on right now, Jill, as we've been mentioning. So this all unfolds yesterday morning outside the White House. Like Trump's walking on the roof of the West Wing. Clearly, they gave the reporters a heads up because all the media was like set up on the driveway, being like, "What is the president doing walking on the roof of the White House?" Take a listen to a bit of this.
Can you give us another hint?
I will show you. It's just another way to spend my money for the country.
So, Jill, unclear what he's thinking. I wonder if he wants like the ceiling raised on the West Wing. Remember, if you look at the White House, there's the proper White House, right? The building that we all know. And then there's the East Wing and the West Wing. And these are extensions that were built over time. The West Wing was built by Teddy Roosevelt just over 100 years ago because all the business used to happen out of the White House, but the presidency and the executive branch outgrew the traditional White House with those small little rooms there in the residence. And so they built out the West Wing. But now, well, the presidency has far outgrown the West Wing. There's only a few offices in there. They've dug deep to try to like add some offices and several basement levels there. But for the most part, most executive roles there are handled across the street at the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. And then across the street from that is something they call the New Executive Office Building. They got all these townhouses, etc. But anyway, there's been years of frustration over like the lack of space in the West Wing. So is Trump looking to maybe add a story to the West Wing? Is he looking to potentially do something to the Oval Office roof and raise the roof, so to speak. Not clear, but he was walking literally on the roof of the West Wing. And it comes as there have been a number of projects just in these first few months of this administration. He paved over the Rose Garden, the grass in the Rose Garden. One of the things that he said was like, especially women with high heels have trouble walking around the Rose Garden. So it equals the playing field. But of course, the Rose Garden, very historic. There are still some roses, but ultimately the grass, the lawn there, we did it before and after on the Instagram account, is gone. And that was a Jackie Kennedy addition to the White House. So very historic there. He's like, we're paving the thing over. He wants a plaza like he has at Mar-a-Lago. Then there was the $200 million state ballroom that is now being built out. That is one of the things that he says he is financing along with donors. Taxpayers are not paying for that. That is a massive addition to the White House complex over on the East Wing side of the White House. Right now, if you want to have big events at the White House, inside the White House, the biggest room can hold like 100-something people. It's an old building, built like 200 plus years ago. If you want to have events, you got to do a tent in the south lawn of the White House, and even that is limited. So this has been a big thing for Trump going back like a long time, like for state dinners that he attended when he was just a business leader. He's like, oh, I got ideas as to what you can do here at the White House. In fact, apparently he called the Obama administration back in the day. This is a story that David Axelrod, a former Obama senior advisor, tells that apparently Trump was making phone calls, in addition to, of course, saying, Obama was born in Africa and is a secret Muslim and wasn't actually born and was looking for his birth certificate. He also apparently was calling, being like, hey, I have ideas on how to improve state dinners. Apparently they did not respond to his phone calls at the time, not surprisingly. But this has been a thing for Trump for a while. And so now, after having not made any changes to the White House, significant physical changes to the White House during his first term, he very much is the second term looking to make changes that he hopes he personally can take advantage of. And Jill, also, I was talking about major exterior things. If you look at the Oval Office of late, the amount of gold touches and gold finishes he's put in the Oval Office is like insane. Like there's, he's a big gold guy. So he's got all these gold accoutrement and gold over the fireplace and all these like gold touches above the door now. And so we posted a few of those photos on Instagram. So he certainly is making the place feel like one of his homes.
It's got a Gilded Age feel.
Very gilded.
All right, now to summer travel and how it has changed for many Americans and also international travelers this summer. It is looking a bit different this year, partly because of the president's tariffs and his overall agenda. America's top destinations, from Vegas to beaches in New England, are a bit quieter. The Washington Post looked at a few of the trends, one being shorter trips, day trips, and staycations. And that's because a lot of Americans are budgeting when it comes to travel this summer. Bank of America saying fewer households are booking airline tickets or hotel rooms now as compared to a year ago. Consumer spending on recreation fell 5% in June compared to the prior month. And the Labor Department saying that the number of people taking time off from work in July dropped to its lowest level since the pandemic. There is a notable exception here, and that is luxury travel, which continues to boom.
Jill, you mentioned Vegas there at the top, and that is a city that analysts and economists are very closely watching right now, because it's one of the first places that indicates a potential recession and the state of the economy. Remember, Vegas, I mean, obviously there are some permanent residents of Vegas, but otherwise it has a heavy reliance on tourism, hospitality, gambling, entertainment, conventions, considered discretionary expenses that people typically first cut back on. They give you a leading indicator of how we're feeling overall about, how much money we have in our wallets. Now, hotel room occupancy has now fallen in Vegas year over year by about 12%. Now, one issue is it's not just Americans. It's a lot of foreign tourism that has dropped, including from both Europe in Asia. The Trump administration has imposed stricter visa requirements, immigration requirements. There is concern among, some folks in foreign countries. There have been stories involving individuals from a lot of different countries about being stopped at the border, about being turned around, not being able to enter the country, various rumors about things on their social media that have led folks at Customs and Border Patrol to turn them around. So you do have an increasing number of foreign travelers who are like, yeah, we're going to avoid the U.S. right now. On top of that, of course, you have the Canadians who are very upset about the policies Trump has imposed in regards to tariffs, in regards to his talk of adding Canada as the 51st state, calling it the 51st state. So a lot of Canadians, some of whom travel to Vegas, have said, no thanks this year, Las Vegas. And just to give you a sense of the numbers, Canadians make up roughly 1 in 4 tourists in America. So the fact that Canadians in particular are steering clear of the U.S. Has been a financial hit, not just to Vegas, but a lot of border towns, a lot of communities, frankly, across the country, not just on the border. Certainly they feel it in Washington State and in Maine and in New York and Minnesota. But beyond that, a lot of Canadians, they travel to Florida in the winter. A lot of Canadians, they go to Arizona. And so ultimately here, this is a shift that we're seeing that is having an economic impact. But back to Vegas for a second, we'll continue to watch the numbers there. If that is just an indication of foreign travelers or of something bubbling up here in terms of the American economy.
And I want to quickly mention there was a new Pew survey that shows Canadians' opinions of the United States and also of President Trump are at or near historic lows. A majority of Canadians now see the U.S. as a country that poses the top threat to their own. That's a big shift from 2019. That's when China was the most often named as the top threat. Only about a third of Canadians have a favorable opinion of the U.S. today, and that's down 20 percentage points since last year. Moshe, I was listening to an interview with a Canadian, and it was about travel, and she was saying she doesn't have a lot of power when it comes to geopolitics, but not traveling to the United States felt like one small thing that she could do as a protest of sorts. Okay, time for the speed read. Starting in the Middle East, Axios reporting that the U.S. is planning to significantly increase its role in providing humanitarian aid to Gaza. President Trump discussed the plans with U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, over dinner Monday night following Witkoff's trip to Israel and Gaza. And before he headed to Moscow, Moshe, busy guy.
Yeah, that's Steve Witkoff, a busy guy. I've gotten to know some people who know Witkoff from the real estate development scene of New York, and they're all just like, I can't believe Witkoff has become this like international diplomat trying to negotiate world peace. But yeah, he's headed between two of the more rough conflicts right now happening in the world.
Do you want that job, Moshe? I don't know. It feels pretty thankless right about now.
Yeah, this is the thing, is like, as long as you're not easily frustrated by some of the more frustrating people on earth, or you just like a really impossible challenge, which, some people are wired that way.
He certainly is a good book to write after the Trump administration is wrapped. Okay, so meanwhile, a U.S. official says that it was decided that the Trump administration will take over the management of the humanitarian aid effort because Israel not handling it adequately. The official didn't say what role the U.S. would actually play, but that Gulf countries like Qatar will contribute money. Jordan and Egypt will also likely be involved. The White House not responding to requests for comment right now.
Now, ultimately, Trump is not thrilled about the idea of the U.S. taking charge, but it kind of has to happen. I mean, the one thing the U.S. and the Israelis agree on is they don't like the UN, and they believe that UN has been in cahoots with Hamas. So they've been looking for an alternative here, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that they put together with a bunch of contractors, has only had some partial success and some major failures there. And an official in the White House says, listen, the starvation problem in Gaza is getting worse. Trump doesn't like it. He wants mothers to be able to nurse their children. He's become fixated on it. So he wants to fix it. Now, how does this get done without U.S. military being on the ground there? That's going to be something he is not inclined to support. It's also something his MAGA base, Republicans, are not inclined to support. An increasing number of folks on the right are very against the U.S. being involved anywhere in the world, even if it involves, in this case, support for Israel, where there is increasing criticism on the right, in addition to the left, for how Israel has executed, especially these last few months of the war. Now, as far as the Israelis are concerned, they are very much supportive of the U.S. taking control here. The Israelis don't want to have to manage it. Jill, stark numbers from the UN of late. They put out numbers on just how much aid is coming in and how much is actually getting distributed. 90 to 95% of the aid is getting stolen before it gets to its ultimate location. So armed mobs, armed gangs, Hamas, basically stealing it. And so ultimately, a just small amount of aid. And that's one of the reasons why you're seeing certain, parts of Gaza not getting sufficient food, because the food, it appears there is enough food going in. It's just not getting to the right places. And again, this is a place the size of the city of Philadelphia. If there was a proper mechanism for distribution, that would be key here to potential success. But, ultimately this all comes as Netanyahu, the prime minister, has said that amid the fact that Hamas is unwilling to negotiate a ceasefire right now, Hamas is looking at the news being like, why would we negotiate a ceasefire? Israel's getting pummeled in the headlines. The world's going to have to force Israel to concede to us. And so Hamas is just sitting back here. Netanyahu made a decision in the last 24 hours to say, you know what, I'm taking the rest of Gaza. Israel controls about 75% of Gaza. The military, though, in Israel says, no, this is a terrible idea. And the reasons why we haven't taken the last part of Gaza is because, Mr. Prime Minister, that's where the hostages are, and they will be harmed if we go there. And it doesn't appear here that Netanyahu really is going to be convinced by the military. He believes that he needs to show force here in order for a deal to take place. So, Jill, multiple things happening here. The hostages remain there. Hamas believes that advantage Hamas right now, despite the situation, which is the humanitarian situation. And that's where Trump is figuring out how he can get involved. But previous U.S. efforts have not been that successful. I'd like to remind folks again about the floating port that Biden tried to create that cost hundreds of millions of dollars and was an abject failure. So we'll see what they come up with.
From NBC News, tens of millions of Americans across nearly a dozen states have been under air quality alerts this week as smoke from wildfires in Canada drift over the region. We are talking hazy skies over Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, northern Indiana, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Delaware, and Maine. This is all according to the National Weather Service. Almost 200 wildfires are burning out of control in Canada. It's looking like more than 16.5 million acres have been scorched so far this year in what will likely be the country's second worst wildfire season on record. So, Moshe, on Tuesday, Detroit, Chicago, and New York were among the top 10 worst major cities in the world when it comes to air quality.
Yeah, it was rough out there. We heard from a number of you. You should see some relief today with various weather patterns moving, but with all these wildfires still active, you may see it again in the next couple of weeks. So beware, even if you get a respite today. There's also a bunch of wildfires we're watching out west that could impact air quality across the country.
And from the New York Times, days of relentless rain in Hong Kong set off major floods on Tuesday that swept cars away, inundated a hospital emergency ward, and left buses stranded. Even for Hong Kong, which is used to seasonal typhoons, this record-breaking deluge has pushed it to its limits. On Tuesday morning, authorities issued their highest rain alert for the fourth time in 8 days. It's called a black rainstorm warning, which means they're expecting nearly 3 inches or more of rainfall in an hour. On Tuesday, Hong Kong recorded 14 inches of rain by mid-afternoon, which was the highest daily amount for August since records began in 1884.
Yeah, we've been seeing more and more of these storms where they just dump a whole bunch of rain in a very short period of time, overwhelming systems. We've seen this, one of the factors here, folks, that's linked to this is climate change. As the atmosphere gets warmer, that means the clouds can hold more moisture, and more moisture means more rain in a certain period of time. So what is typical in the tropics, we're now seeing in places where they don't typically see it, or even if they do see a large amount of rain, even more rain than expected. Across East Asia, we've seen a bunch of major downpours of late that have been deadly in Taiwan, as well as in Beijing. But in Hong Kong, if you've ever been there, it is built on hillsides, mountainsides. And so ultimately, there were a bunch of landslides in the city due to the storms.
From Mo News, President Trump saying Tuesday his administration will release new rules and regulations on migrant farm labor. It follows months of back and forth on so-called amnesty for agricultural workers without legal status who make up more than 40% of the U.S. farm labor force. That's according to the Department of Agriculture. The president telling CNBC's Squawk Box that his administration is working on ways to allow some undocumented farm workers to temporarily be sent back to their home country and then return to the U.S. legally. Moshe, here is how he described the situation.
But we're taking care of our farmers. We can't let our farmers not have anybody, these people, that you can't replace them very easily. People that live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. they don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer the other day? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die. I said, that's interesting, isn't it? You know, these are very, you know, in many ways, they're very, very special people.
All right, so Jill, a couple things here based on just listening to that. The odd claim that Hispanic workers are somehow genetically more predisposed to do this labor without ever having a hurt back. We should just say that, like, no group of people probably feels an intrinsic urge to cultivate the land on low wages or like have a genetic disposition to this sort of thing. But putting that aside for a second, the bigger issue at play here is that the White House has struggled to come up with a policy that would appease both parts of the MAGA base. The business leaders who very much, you know, want the economy to function and understand that good percentages of farm workers, hospitality workers, construction workers happen to be undocumented migrants. But then the other part of the MAGA base, the immigration hawks, the ones who are like, get everyone out of here. If you didn't come here legally or you don't have immediate legal status, we want you out, right? The Stephen Miller wing of the party. And so he's been trying to figure out how to do that, because ultimately you kick everyone out, including these, you know, farm workers in many cases who don't have criminal records. What does that mean to the state of our produce and all these farms? And can you do that? Can you transition in a way, whether it's to robotics or American employees, that will ensure that we don't start to have food shortages in the grocery stores? So they've been going back and forth, Jill. If you've listened to this podcast for the past few months, we keep telling you, like, he's gone this direction, he's gone that direction, he's gone this direction. So this was interesting to hear on CNBC that they are, again, trying to come up with some sort of policy that allows him to continue the deportations and his immigration policy, but also doesn't put the nation's food supply at risk.
From Politico, Transportation Secretary and Acting NASA Administrator Sean Duffy plans to direct the agency to fast-track their plans to install a nuclear reactor on the moon with a target launch date of 2030. This is response to a Russian-Chinese partnership to get a reactor on the moon by the mid-2030s. Talks about developing a lunar reactor have been underway since the Biden administration, but this directive is now offering an actual timeline. The reason for the rush now, the first country to have a reactor on the moon could declare what's called, quote, keep out zones, which would make it hard for others to install a reactor of their own. Duffy said in his directive that a reactor would be key to advancing nuclear technology, support a future lunar economy, help lead to high-power energy generation on Mars, and also strengthen national security.
So for all of you asking, why would they need a nuclear reactor on the moon? Isn't it out there? Like, isn't the sun out there? Wouldn't solar work up there? The deal on the moon, apparently, as I'm learning, is one lunar day is the equivalent to 4 weeks on Earth. So you have about 2 weeks of darkness followed by 2 weeks of light. So that makes batteries and solar difficult up there, and why a nuclear reactor would be extremely useful for a variety of things, especially as they're looking at all the minerals on the moon. They're looking to basically use all the potential ice there on the South Pole of the moon. They're hoping that they can then turn that into, well, all the elements of water, right? H2O. They can use that into fuel. They can turn that into drinking water. They can turn that into oxygen. So you're going to need a lot of power to do all of that stuff. So it's apparently we're entering the phase now, Jill, of the second space race. The first one was in the 50s and 60s and 70s. The second one now takes place in this millennia, in this century, and is a race to put a moon base together, put a nuclear power plant on the moon, cultivate the moon. I'm sure we'll have to come to some sort of international agreement. Remember, years ago, we came to a deal where, like, no one owns Antarctica, right? It is just for research. How will we, like, handle the moon in the coming decades? How will that work? Now, the big issue is NASA's dealing with a lot of budget cuts here. They're very much dependent on private companies like Elon Musk's SpaceX. You also have Amazon Blue Origin, Boeing, well, with some failures of late, has been involved in the space program. So we'll see what comes all of it. But Jill, I know a favorite show of both of ours is the Apple Plus series For All Mankind, which imagines this alternate reality. So every time I see these stories, I imagine your mind goes to the same place, because there are a few seasons in now on the For All Mankind where we decide the space race never ended in that alternate U.S.-Soviet world. I believe in that show, they had a nuclear reactor by like the 80s on the moon.
Yeah, they were living on the moon, but they had a hotel. They had tourism on the moon.
A floating hotel. Like all this is happening like in the 90s. And so...
and we're like, travel to the moon? What are you, crazy? But I think it shows that we did sort of put space travel on the back burner a little bit. And it feels like just that China mostly is now expressing a lot of interest, that the U.S. is like, okay, wait a minute, we got to get in gear again.
Yeah, the new Cold War, the new race is between the U.S. and China, and it involves AI. It involves lithium and various key minerals here on Earth that are involved in technology. It involves computer chips. And in this case, it involves, building a nuclear reactor on the moon.
And for travel a little closer to home, from CNN, the Department of Homeland Security announced an expansion of the TSA checkpoints for families that are traveling with children and military members. So the TSA is going to be adding a dedicated family lane at security checkpoints under a new program called Families on the Fly. It is available for families traveling with kids 12 and under. The TSA says it wants to make airport security experience as smooth and stress-free as possible for traveling families, looking to mitigate the unique challenges families face when traveling and minimize stress while maintaining the highest level of security. Moshe, I have no idea what they're talking about. Traveling with kids, totally stress-free, easy. At least
really,
my experience. Yeah,
Jill,
right.
I'm learning, especially as like Olivia turns 2, like how much changes from like infant travel to toddler travel. There's like, it's great before 1, but then once you go into the 2, 3 age, like terrible. But then maybe you're finding out that by like 5 or 6, it starts to get easier again, potentially. But then it gets worse again when they're teens, right? It's like up and down.
Yes, and I think you're entering maybe a rough stage.
We're
I'm sorry.
We really have to plan around her nap and like keep our fingers crossed that like there's no delays that like start to mess with nap time. But in the meantime, if you're looking for this, there are a number of airports that will be participating in the program: Charlotte, Honolulu, Jacksonville, John Wayne Airport in Orange County, Oklahoma City, as well as the airport in Providence, Rhode Island, are among those. So look out for the family lanes there. There will also be a discount for the TSA Trusted Traveler program if you want to partake in that. And they're also going to be rolling out a special lane for uniformed military members, as well as military spouses who will be receiving a discount. All right, we end here with On This Day in History. On this day in 1945, the U.S. B-29 superfortress Enola Gay dropped the atom bomb on this day on Hiroshima, Japan. The goal, end the war before the U.S. would have to invade, leading to potentially 1 million deaths with an invasion of Japan. Now, ultimately, that goal would be met, though the U.S. would drop a second atom bomb several days later on the city of Nagasaki. Between Nagasaki and Hiroshima, nearly 200,000 people would die, and a number of people, of course, suffering from radiation poisoning in the decades afterwards. But it would bring about an end to World War II officially, having ended earlier that year in May of 45 in Europe, and then in August of 1945 in Japan. On this day in 1962, Jamaica becomes an independent country after 300 years of British rule. So happy birthday, Jamaica. On this day in 1965, President Lyndon Baines Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act, prohibiting racial discrimination in voting, a huge achievement during that time, and one that required him to do a lot of lobbying with his own party, the Southern Democrats at that time. They were very much pushing back on that. We end here with a bit of music and movie history. On this day in 1976, Manfred Mann's Earth Band releases Blinded by the Light. Jill, we just heard a few seconds of that version, but of course, the person who first wrote that song is your guy, Bruce Springsteen.
And I have to say, as much as I love Bruce Springsteen, his version, it doesn't quite hit how the other one does.
Listen, sometimes, we talked last week, I think we were talking about the same version. James Taylor did a version of a song that Carole King had done.
You've Got a Friend?
Right. It was You've Got a Friend. We've talked on previous podcasts about the Dolly Parton versus Whitney Houston in their versions of
I Will Always Love You.
Of I Will Always Love You.
I don't know.
We've talked about their version of I Will Always Love You. And again, I don't know how, while Dolly wrote the song, how many people can argue that Whitney didn't she killed that song. And then you also have Respect which was originally a song written by Otis Redding about a woman respecting her man, and Aretha Franklin really doing a number on the song. Like she made the song the way it is, Respect, and it was a song about respecting your woman. So through history here, always interesting to hear the various versions.
RESPECT. All right. That is it for the Mo News podcast today. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us kindly in the App Store. The reviews help.
See you guys tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the Mo News podcast. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed.